Good evening and welcome to November 19th, 2020 meeting of the Philipstown Planning Board. Tonight will be led by Laura O'Connell in our Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise in your homes and Laura, do us the honors, please.
Right. Pledge of Allegiance to the
the
flag
flag
of the United States
of America and
to the republic
for
for which it stands, one nation,
one nation,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and over to you, Kelly, for a roll call, please.
Sure. Kim Connor.
Here.
Dennis Gagnon.
Here.
Peter Lewis.
Here.
Laura O'Connell.
here.
Neil Tolman.
Here.
Heidi Wendell.
Here.
Neil Zuckerman.
Here, thank you very much. Okay, good evening and welcome to the November 19th meeting of the 2020 meeting of the Philipstown Planning Board. Just a couple of introductory remarks. We have a very busy agenda tonight, and we've had a very busy agenda throughout most of COVID. And I just want to be recognized. One, I want to thank my fellow town board, planning board members. You are all volunteers. You're working very diligently. These are not short evenings, and they're followed by, or they're preceded by, a great deal of research and thoughtfulness that you put into the work. So thank you. Ron and Steve, our stalwart supporters, thank you for your commitment. This is not easy as well. No, you're not volunteers, but I'm sure the compensation is not great. And then Bob Flaherty, thank you for your town board representation, because you have a full-time job as well as the town board job. So thank you for that, Kelly, as well. Of course, for everyone knows in the public, Kelly runs 3 of the town boards: the planning, the zoning, and the conservation board. That is not an easy burden. And I say all that because the burden we face is the following. It takes about twice as long, or maybe 50% longer, to run a Zoom meeting than a regular meeting. From, I can't hear this, can you hear me? I can't get the screen. Oh, I don't know, can you see me? And that takes a longer time. Add to that, though, that, as you all know, and I think the real estate mavens in this room know it well, the exodus from New York City to our area has materially increased the volume of projects in front of us. We have never seen this level of this tempo before. Certainly I haven't in the almost decade I've been on this board. So the volume is double and the speed is maybe 75% what it normally is. So take all that together and you've got a much slower process. And given the extenuating circumstances of Zoom, it just is only so much we can last. So I want to thank you all, and I say that for the public to understand this is not normal process and these are not normal times. So with that, let's approve the October minutes, or have a motion to consider that approval. The motion to approve minutes. Thank you, Kim.
Motion.
I'll take it. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil. Any discussion, any changes? None? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, opposition, abstentions, thank you very much. Okay, to the issue of returning of a cash bond, as Ron stated briefly a minute ago, if people hadn't a chance to read it, it was something like 13 years ago. This action was taken and done. I don't know when the fence was put in place, but it sounds like it's been over a decade for the Vamco Realty property. Are there any questions about this return of cash performance bond?
The only question really is whether or not it's ready to go. Like, are all the bills paid? Which Ron and Steve would.
Yeah, there hasn't been activity on the project for a long time.
Yeah, this is a performance bond. This isn't review funds, I don't believe. And Ron has confirmed that the work has been done, so it's appropriate for the board to adopt a resolution advising the town board that they can release the bond at this time.
Okay, so can I have a motion? Any other discussion? Anybody? And when I say that, let me just be really clear for everyone's sake. If I ask for comments and you want to say something, wave, unmute, put in the chat, do something. I actually forget the chat. Don't do the chat. You know, wave or comment, but just get my attention. We are all going to get to talk, but we are going to also only be here till 10 o'clock. There's no way we're going more than 2.5 hours. So any comments? Okay, can I have a motion then release the remaining escrow or bond, please?
I'll make that motion.
All right, and technically I should augment that. We're actually
I'll second
asking the town, we're actually, thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Peter. We're asking the town board to do that, not us. We're authorizing them to do so, that it's fine. So Under that slight augmentation, can I have a vote?
Oh, again, the motion.
Thank you. Motion seconded. May I have a vote?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Abstentions? Okay, passes. Okay. The last thing I'll say is I've never had to recuse myself 3 times in the total 10 years I've been this board. Now I'm recused on 3 things in one evening. So I think that's just another indication, not of how many people I know, but how many projects we have. So I turn my gavel over to First Vice Chair Kim Connor, who is leading the Heitmann matter. Over to you, Kim.
Okay. So what we were waiting on, as far as I know, for Heitmann was confirmation that the land trust didn't have a problem with the changes, the different land trusts, open space, scenic Hudson. And we have a couple of approval documents prepared should we need them. And also the letter from the Natural Resources Review Officer and Conservation Board. I guess if anybody has, I want to know if anybody has any questions. Is there any further question anyone has? Okay. Any remarks, Ron?
No, at this time, I think the board's previously been to the site. So the matter's ready for action. You have draft resolutions in front of you for consideration tonight.
And Steve, is there anything that you have to say about this?
No, I concur with Ron. I think it's appropriate for the board to act on the secret resolution and the approval resolution at this time.
Okay. So I guess with that, then
Secret first.
seeker.
No, excuse me, there's no secret
Right, because it's a type
declaration
2,
to
right?
make. This is a residential project. At their initial meeting, the board identified it as a type 2 action.
I stand corrected. You should go on to the approval resolution.
Okay, so in that case, then, would someone like to make a motion to approve the approval resolution?
I'll make that motion.
First, Peter, second, Dennis. Dennis, you second?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And then the second piece of paper I have here is is there only one then if we don't have seeker? Yeah, okay.
That's right, that's
So
right.
so that's it then.
Yeah, you're all done.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
As always, demonstrating how you earned the first vice chair role. Well done. Well done, Kim.
So I'm going to hand this back over to Neil. Thank you very much.
Well, we're honored to have your skills. All right.
Don't say things like that. It drives me nuts.
A compliment is the cheapest thing you can give to a soldier. So I give them.
I know. I just.
All right, moving on. Magazzino. Enjoy the compliment. Just take it.
Thank you very much.
Magazzino. All right, we have a secret, and we have a lot line adjustment permit and amended site plan approval. I have Ron or Steve, any comments before I'm going to try and just do a blanket approval of both documents?
No, I've nothing further. The board's been through this project for a long while. I think everybody's very familiar with what's being proposed.
Steve, anything?
I reviewed both resolutions that Ron prepared, and I think everything's in order. I think it's time
All right.
to act.
All right, well, this is a great project for our community, a continued evolution of the Spano family's investment, Olin Spano family's investment in our community, and we're excited to see what happens. So I'm going to ask for a motion on both the to accept both the SECRA declaration and the lot line adjustment and site plan approval. Can I have a motion, please?
Really, Neil, you should do them separately, just in case that there's, look, it probably won't happen, but just in case there's somebody who wants to vote on one, doesn't want to vote on another, just procedure is really to do them separately.
Fine. I will now, I will remand my original comment to the dustbin of history and ask it again. Can I have a motion for the secret declaration, please? Thank you, Kim. Second. Neil, thank you. Any comments on it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Dennis. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Okay, on the actual lot line adjustment permit and amended site plan approval, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Laura. Peter will be the second. Any comments, questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposition? Thank you, Dennis. Any abstentions? Okay. Congratulations, Glenn, and wish your client lots of luck. Okay, next on to Kepler. I'll turn it over to you, Ron. Questions at this
Right,
point?
the board's previously been to the site. The applicant's amended his plans relative to the landscaping originally proposed in steep slopes. So that concern has been mitigated by the revised plans that's been presented. Public hearing has been held, and so you're now ready to take action on the proposal. You have both a negative secret declaration to consider as well as a site plan approval.
And just for educational purposes, the secret declaration as opposed to the Heitmann is because of why?
It's not specifically a residential project. It's landscaping and variety of improvements they're doing.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful for everyone, I think. And any comments? I know we have a letter we received from the Hudson Hollows Land Trust. I know that it's obviously that's not a governmental body, but any reaction to that?
Seems like it's all in order.
So no comments on that. Steve, anything else to add?
No, it's a minor point. I agree with Ron. It's prudent to adopt a secret resolution on this. I think technically speaking, if the board had wanted to, they could consider it part of a residential development and call it a type 2. But since we haven't gone down that road, I think the best practice would be to adopt the secret resolution and then the approval resolution.
Is there anyone have discomfort with the notion of doing a secret declaration on this?
Nope.
No one? Okay. So I'm going to ask for, excuse me, for then a motion on the secret declaration. It's not a very easy acronym to pronounce.
No,
The
it's not.
secret declaration. Yeah. A Q should be followed by a U in normal parlance. Secret declaration. A motion, please, on that topic.
You kind of faded out there.
May I have a motion on the secret deck? Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Any second?
I'll
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Let's do the second piece then. Second, we have the site plan approval resolution. May I have a motion for to adopt the site plan resolution for Kepler, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Kim, I'll give you the second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kepler. Best of luck to you and your project. Glenn, please convey that to your client. Okay, now we have a public hearing for Mr. Lombardi related to properties of a lot line adjustment. Kelly, could you please read the public hearing notice?
Sure. The Philipstown Planning Board for the Town of Philipstown, New York will hold a public hearing on Thursday, November 19th, 2020, starting at 7:30 via Zoom to hear the following appeal. If you would like to attend, please email kmcintyre@philipstown.com to request login information before 7 p.m. on November 19th, 2020. Joseph Powell Lombardi, 19 Fieldstone Ridge, Cold Spring, Tax number 16.11-1-9, 7 and 5, subdivision approval to adjust the line dividing lands of Leach from lands of Lombardi. Said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies of the application, plat map, and other related materials may be seen in the office of the Planning Board at the Philipstown Building Department, dated at Philipstown, New York, October 15th, 2020.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Do we have a representative to present the issue or the application?
I believe it's Glenn Watson.
Oh, Glenn Watson. Good evening. You're on mute, Glenn. You're on mute. Glenn, you're on mute. Thank you.
Here,
You have the floor, Glenn.
thank you. As the public notice stated, this is a lot line adjustment. Property is located in Lake Valhalla. I can almost throw a rock to it from where I'm sitting right now. Essentially, we have two adjoining parcels, and I'm going to focus on the upper right. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Please.
You folks see it?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Essentially, we have two parcels. One parcel is almost twice is actually bigger than twice the requirement for the zoning up here. That's the leach parcel, which is, I'm outlining it with the cursor now. And the Lombardi parcel is a small parcel, which is well under the required minimum. And I'm going to focus over here on the right-hand side. The whole story is shown in these three panels. We have the smaller, on the top right of your screen, you should have the smaller Lombardi parcel to the left in that frame, and the larger leach parcel to the right. Essentially, we're seeking to be able to convey this strip in between in the second parcel, in the second frame rather. We're seeking to have Mr. Leach convey that to Mr. Lombardi so that Mr. Lombardi's will get larger, Mr. Leach's will get smaller, but remain more than conformant with zoning. Mr. Lombardi's parcel will not yet conform, but going any further would really impact the Leach property. So what you end up with is in the third panel, you'll end up with a larger Lombardi parcel and a slightly smaller Leach parcel. So we're seeking approval of that. There is no, there's no new lots conveyed. There's no new structures being planned. It's simply making the lot line make more sense to both parties. With that, I'd have to answer any questions if I'm able.
Ron or Steve, you want to add anything?
Well, the board had seen this application back in the beginning of the year, as you will recall. You actually had advanced it to the point of a public hearing when the property owner withdrew the application. This new application came in more recently, but it's identical to what the board has seen before. And so procedurally, you're just at the point where you're retracing your steps from what was done at the beginning of the year. So you have the obligation to conduct a public hearing, and then you can move the project to an action.
Yeah, I agree completely with Ron. This is the second time through for this application. It's nothing new, and it's really about as straightforward a lot line adjustment as you can get. So, you know, if the public has any comments on it, and once you close the public hearing, unless there are some issues that I'm not aware of, I think you'll be in a position to direct Ron to prepare approval resolutions for next month.
So thank you, gentlemen. I generally like to ask the public for comments before going back to the board, since we did have a first shot. If any board members are okay with that, I'd like to open it to public first and then come back to them for any additional comments, since this is the public hearing. Any opposition to that approach? Thank you. Okay, Kelly, do we have any members of the public who want to speak? Is Kelly frozen? Oh, Kelly could be frozen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, all right. Oh, all right. Kelly, do we have any members of the public who want to speak? Can you? No?
Nobody's has their hand up.
All right. Well, let me turn to board members then for any questions they may have, and we'll give the chance for the public maybe to mosey onto the mic. Anybody? Bueller? No one? Okay. All right. So then I'm gonna do the thing what I like to do, which is to close the public hearing. Going once, going twice. Okay. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I'll make that motion, Neil.
All right. Peter first, Dennis second. Any discussion about closing? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, public hearing is now closed. I'll turn back to Ron and Steve. So could we direct you to create materials now for when we return next time to approve this?
Sure.
That's pretty common practice in this type
Yeah.
of thing.
So let's, in fact, I know we don't have the exact language, but I'd like a motion to direct Ron to create the materials so we can approve this at our next meeting.
So I'll make the motion to direct Ron to
Thank you,
prepare
Kim.
the-
I saw Peter with his hand up. That's a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, Ron, for doing that between now and then. And thank you, Glenn, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so now it is 7:52. I would like to give at least 45 minutes, so call that 8:37, for us to discuss CRS. I really do appreciate, Ron, you putting together these notes. Hopefully everyone has them and has gone through them and sees the questions they have. This is just a tool for us to have a discussion. So for those listening, the public, the board is now going to have a discussion amongst itself with Ron and Steve as our experts. And Glenn, if we have questions for you, maybe you can answer them on behalf of the applicant or any other agents of the applicant that may be in attendance. But I think the board has been very clear of wanting to have a fulsome discussion about this action. So I'm not going to belabor. What I will do is I will go in turn to each of you to ask you just ask your questions, and we'll use the time. We do have other matters tonight, as you know, so we can't do this for the rest of the evening, but we can spend a fair amount of time on it because it matters. It's a big project, and the fact that we had 3 public hearings or kept the public hearing open for 3 meetings is indicative of the magnitude and the concerns from this board. So I'd like to just start. Heidi is to my right in the Hollywood squares. So here, so I'm going to give the floor to Heidi. And again, Heidi, I think, and actually, let me ask a ground rule first. Steve, can people ask both questions and share their views of things, or is that out of scope?
Oh, the board in discussion is free to ask the applicant anything that they want. They're free to make comments, which of course the applicant should take note of, and other board members may as well. What can't happen unless the board grants permission is for members of the public to comment or ask questions. This isn't a public hearing. It's a meeting that's being held in public. The board has discretion if it wishes to allow either questions or comments from the public, but generally speaking, that's not done, and this is a time for the board to talk amongst itself with the applicant.
Good. All right. So that I think that those are pretty broad ground rules. So just keep it clean. No, I'm just kidding. So Heidi, over to you. Just to go ahead, either questions or statements or both to you.
Well, I have 2 questions. The first is whether or not the applicant had sought any information about accidents in the area of the site or the nearby area. Because, for example, just recently, within the last month, there was a fatal accident at the intersection of 301 and Route 9. I think I'm curious whether that was just a totally anomalous event. I'm and whether or not the applicant has taken into account that type of data that might be informative as to whether or not it would be safe to have this additional heavy traffic in the area. My second question is, I'll just get them both out quickly, and then Glenn or whoever's going to answer. And my second question is, I noted that there have been several articles recently, one in the PCNR, this was in the last month, about the fact that because of the COVID situation, traffic is greatly reduced. Not that you would really notice it in Cold Spring on a weekend, but traffic in this area is about 20% low by one estimation, and by another estimation, at least like 12.5% low throughout the whole region, and specifically around 20% in this area. And I'm assuming that would probably be reflected on Route 9. And I was wondering if the applicant took that into account. I don't recall seeing anything about that in either the traffic study number 1 or the amended traffic study or traffic study that was answering prior comments. Those are my questions.
So Glenn, if you'd like to answer, or I don't know if there's anyone else from the applicant, feel free. And then Heidi, again, you have the floor until, you feel like you want to pass it on, but let's go ahead, Glenn.
I can answer it. Mr. Canning should be on if he can be let in. If that's possible, he'll be the better one to answer the question.
That would be great. Kelly, could you do that? He's the traffic engineer. Thank you. Great. Yeah, he is here.
There he is. Still muted.
I don't know if it's a self mute or you have to, there he is. There you are, John.
My apologies. Good
That's
evening,
fine.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. If I may, I'd like to share my screen to answer the first question. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, John.
Okay. So we did reach out to the New York State DOT and requested accident data for 1,000 feet on either side of the driveway. The summary of the data is at the top of the screen, and I've blown it up a little bit below so that you can see it better. Basically, there were 3 accidents in the 3-year period from 2017, 2018, and 2019. Each of them were about 1/10 of a mile apart. They occurred at milepost 1081, 1078, and 1079. The site is in the vicinity of 1078. Interestingly, all 3 accidents occurred at hours when the facility would not be in operation, 9:32 p.m., 9:38 p.m. And the other accidents, 2 of the accidents were on Sunday. I presume the facility will not be in operation on Sunday. The accidents were all single vehicle accidents. 2 of them had no injuries. 1 of them resulted in injuries. In that accident, somebody was traveling with unsafe speed going northbound on Route 9, and they collided with an animal. And the other 2 accidents, 1 of them was a tire failure and a collision with the guide rail, and the second was the animal, some sort of animal action. I guess they hit a deer. And there were no accidents that were at the driveway or at First Street. The 5th Street, Route 301, and some driveway were quoted as the closest intersections, and intersection 1079 is a little bit further north of the site, or milepost 1079. So that's the answer to the first question. We got 3 years worth of data. It indicates that that section of roadway is generally safe. The accidents were mostly not serious in nature, were caused by things that wouldn't be associated with driveways, such as animal action, which is unpredictable, and tire failure. With regard to the increase in the volumes, I am sure that we did. I don't remember by how much, but when you go on with other questions, I will dig that information up and get back to you. I know that we did increase the traffic volumes to account for COVID, and also it's my professional opinion that there is not any appreciable reduction in speed. Even though the volumes are lower, it doesn't mean people are driving slower. And even if that were the case, we have accounted for it by the normal standard of care for engineering is to design sight lines for the 85th percentile. And we want to make sure that this is safe, so we've designed it to the 95th percentile, greater than the 95th percentile. So I will get back to you, Heidi, with the answer to your second question, if I may.
Can I just ask one follow-up question? How do you decide on the 1,000 feet on either side of the driveway? Is that standard to just use that measurement?
Well, we want to make sure that we get any accidents in that section of roadway. And if accidents occur beyond that roadway, it's not really relative to what's happening at the driveway or in the vicinity of the driveway. It's based on engineering judgment. Sorry, everybody's over on the left side and I'm looking, that's better. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Heidi, anything else you want to ask?
I don't know if anyone else is going to ask about the letter that we just got very
Good point.
recently about the fact that I think it's just, it reflects kind of the intuition of this area where it's not necessarily cars going too fast or so in other words, the letter pointed out that a lot of the problem is that if anyone goes too slowly, that there's it's a difficult area to exactly analyze, but there's a lot of problems caused by people going too slowly at the air, and then cars get backed up, and then they get kind of desperate. And this gets back to my question the last time, well, during the public hearing, where I would have felt more comfortable if there had been a longer visual observation of the site, because that kind of that's a kind of effect of the traffic movement in that area that is difficult to measure. It's not just speed, it's kind of the whole gestalt of what's going on at that location. That's by way of a comment, I guess, but it remains, an issue that, I think an hour of observation it seems like insufficient to know what's exactly happening.
Well, and I respect that opinion. I will offer that the normal standard of care when we do these traffic studies, normally there's many intersections involved. So we go out to each intersection, we document the physical features of the intersection, and we spend about 10 minutes observing how traffic performs at the intersection. And that's the standard of care we performed for this project. And then we met with your board virtually, and that was a concern that you expressed. So, we've done everything that we can when you have a question on safety, site distance, speeds, volumes, to be responsive and give you the evidence that you need to base your decision on. So we went back out and we observed that location because you had expressed some concern, and we felt that an hour would be appropriate. We may disagree on whether that's appropriate or not, and I do respect that, but it is more than the normal standard of care for a study like this.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. So Steve, just for whether for Heidi or for others, is it appropriate for board members to suggest things that would get them more comfortable with the project?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That gives the applicant guidance on how to proceed. Doesn't mean that they're binding on the board, mind you. In fact, the rest of the board might disagree with something that one of the board members brings up, but it's important for the applicant and the rest of the board members to know what the sentiment and thoughts are of everyone. So by all means, if there's something that someone wants to suggest, they should suggest it.
I asked that because I think we have, the applicant has done a number of studies at this point, and I think it's time for us to give them a little more guidance about our sentiment. It doesn't mean we couldn't ask them to do more research, but I do think we're at a place where we're giving them clarity about if there is anything that people would feel comfortable about seeing in the project. I just want to make that as a marker for each of you as you go around and ask questions or make comments to just share. So I'm going to come back to you if you have anything else you want to add.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dennis, I'm going to come to you. You're next to my little screen. Dennis, you're still on mute.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I'm okay with, I don't have any questions or comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Kim, you're next to my screen.
So I guess, it's pretty clear that what our concern here is that there's going to be a lot of traffic and there will be accidents because we have experience with these trucks with the same business coming in further up Route 9. And we're concerned about it being able to make the turn without things getting in the way. And I'm just we have put limitations on other companies on Route 9 related to trucks coming in. For example, at the intersection of the Fishkill Road and Route 9, there's the gas station there. And we did put restrictions on that, on where the trucks could come and when they could come to deliver the oil. Now, they didn't always follow that. I know there've been a couple of accidents where cars have actually hit the tanker. So I'm just wondering if it's possible, Steve, to, say you can only have a certain size of truck, or,
Board can impose reasonable conditions. I've spoken before about the possibility of having a limit on the number of truck trips per day, or even in certain parts of the day. Limit on the size of the truck, you're really going to, if you're going to impose it with a rational basis behind it, you're going to need quite a bit of engineering information as to why that would be a necessary condition to impose. The board hasn't in the past, and in fact shouldn't, imposed conditions just because it seems like a good idea. The idea is that unless there's a reason to conditional land use, the board doesn't conditional land use. So, I mean, it's an idea. It's something you may want to look into. And I defer to the engineers, Ron in particular, and if we want to talk to the traffic engineer as well, as to whether that type of thing would be helpful or is necessary.
So let me ask you a follow-up question to that. Was it Perks Plaza where we said they could only have box trucks? And they couldn't have tractor trailers coming in there?
That's right, because in that case, the physical layout of the property was such that larger trucks would pose a danger of the safety problem. Here they may, or they may not. You're going to have to take a look at, I mean, the property size isn't really the issue. It's the intersection with the roadway. So,
Right.
you know, you're going to have to look at what the engineering will require.
Okay. So I would say that that's my major question, just whether there's some way that we can come to some kind of compromise on either, how many trips, or that that's my question. I don't know how much further to where else I can go.
Yeah, well, and John, you don't have to answer. I mean, your job is not to rebut all these things. We're trying to have a conversation, so don't feel obliged to just answer to answer. We've read the materials. I think, Kim, if I may build on what you're asking, I just want to amplify it. I'm not sharing my view yet, but I do think one of the questions for whether it's Ron or Steve or the applicant or all of you, but how do we arrive at some fact base to help support what I think is a common view among at least several people in this call, not everyone necessarily, that the distance, and I remember we saw the curved lines of entry, caused such a slowing of a truck to be of concern for those driving behind that truck. That seems to be the sentiment. But I think, yes, Glenn, please.
I just, on that particular point, and John may want to speak to this, we have reached out to the DOT, and I sent Ron a copy of the letter from the DOT where they're going to let us have a 33-foot wide throat there instead of a 30-foot wide throat. And so that will improve the ability of the trucks, make it easier for the trucks, not improve, they'll still get in, but it will make more room for the trucks to get in there more easily. And there's a lot more stacking room in that property, although we don't intend or expect that we'll have a stacking of trucks. You might get one or two. I actually saw two up the street today, but so the improved, within the site, there's improved stacking room, substantial stacking room. And with the letter that I submitted to Ron today, we just got it recently. We have already widened that throat out to 33 feet wide. And I think we still have mountable curbs.
Correct.
So I think that in terms of getting in and out, we've made it easier. We've gotten a suggestion and we've adopted the suggestion of the DOT.
If I could build on what Kim was asking, I think my guess is what people are concerned about is, I don't know the answer, maybe John, you recall, when the truck is getting off 90 and coming into the facility, it obviously is slowing down to some speed. I don't know what that was, but they're not coming in at 50 miles an hour, right? They're not going, no! They're coming in at some materially slower speed to allow them to thoughtfully get through this, whatever the turning of the curve is. And my guess is what people are concerned about is if it's slowing down so much and takes them X seconds to navigate said turn, even if it's wider, as Glenn said, is that time it takes too much hang time sitting on Route 9 while cars are behind them. I think that's the spirit of the concern and why a shorter truck may be a way to accelerate them getting off Route 9 and into or onto Route 9. I believe that's the spirit of what people are asking.
I understand the question, and I'll give you a two-part answer. The expectation is that there will be one or two, probably only one large tractor trailer in the morning peak hour turning into the site. And it's probably going to take from when it gets to the driveway to where it clears the driveway, 15 seconds to get off the road. And personally, I don't think that would be a problem if that's what happens once an hour and the 2 or 3 or 4 cars behind it have to slow down. I would offer to this board that it would be suggestion it would be a problem if you had that happening 60 times an hour, because it would be constant and there would be a constant backup there. But for the average motorist, the chances of you encountering this truck making this exit, which is legal and normal, and which you could encounter at any other location along the roadway once in a while is I don't think it's a problem. It's a state highway that's dedicated to the transport of goods and people. If it were to happen all the time, I would say, okay, it should have its own lane so that you can get out of the lane. And I just worked on a 1.3 million square foot warehouse in Montgomery. Now I know Montgomery isn't Philipstown, but for a 1.3 million square foot warehouse, we put a right turn lane in because there were a lot of trucks getting off the roadway. It was a 2-lane roadway. I don't think that for 1 truck an hour, that's necessary here. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, John. All right, Peter, Kim, anything else?
The only other thing I guess as a mitigation, idea is there any signage, that caution trucks turning or something like that could be, to alert other motorists to the fact that things might happen up ahead and they haven't seen it happen yet.
I believe I'll have to check because the state and the federal government are very litigious, I don't know if the right word, about the type of signs you may put up. And it used to be quite common to be allowed to put up a sign, truck entrance. And it's a pretty logical sign, but they've been trying to move to symbols as opposed to words. So if we're permitted to do that, we will ask the state to do it. And I'll check again. It's one of the other things I'll check to see if that sign is legitimate. They have a manual with signs in it.
Okay, that's it for me, I guess.
All right, Kim, thank you. Peter, you're up.
Okay, I had a couple of questions. One was a clarification on the site distance calculation. It was 85 to 95%. Was that on the measured speed of the cars that that the information was gathered on, or is that what is it 95% of? That's one, and I know John can answer that. He can answer this other pretty simple query too. What is it about the throat of the roadway opening? Is there a maximum amount of footage that you can have there? I mean, I don't expect the trucks to be coming barreling in, even if it were a 100-foot opening. But why can't it be a greater opening to facilitate the turning of the trucks?
That's a good question. 2 good questions. The answer to the first question is the standard is the 85th percentile, which basically, to the best of my knowledge, if you have 100 people, you look at the 85th person and how fast you order them according to the speed and how fast the 85th person was going, you base your speed on that. Okay. And the 85th percentile was slightly different in either direction, but it was about 54 miles per hour. And then the 95th percentile would be the speed of the 95th person or the 5th fastest person. And that was about 57 miles per hour. So we calculated the speed based on the 57 miles per hour, where the standard dictated that it would be the 54 miles per hour.
I see. So it's able to go above the speed limit there to get a real reading on the speed. Absolutely.
We don't want to design to the speed limit if people are driving faster than it. And at some point, you have to draw the line. So if there's 0.1% of the population is driving at 100 miles an hour, which of course they shouldn't, you're not going to design the roadway for 100 miles an hour. It's just impractical from many aspects. And the second question was the throat width. The DOT has these standards. They like their standards because when they get outside the standards, they're open to liability. And so 30 feet is their maximum under normal conditions. We have been pushing them as hard as we can. And we did get a letter, and I was looking for it. I had it open earlier from them, which basically said, okay, try the 3 radius method first and see if that's better. And we did, and it's not better. And then we'll consider the 33 foot. So we have resent them turning movement drawings with a 33-foot opening, and we're hopeful that they will approve it. And that will obviously make it a little easier to turn in. And as Glenn mentioned, we will have mountable curbs.
Well, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other opinions, Peter, or anything you want to share?
No, I'm pretty comfortable with the gathering together of all the concerns that they're going to be, I assume, given to the applicant that Ron put together. So I'm good to go on that.
Thank you. Ron, that's a good question. I assume Glenn and John and the applicant have received your summary of the questions?
No, that's correct. They were sent out earlier today, so both
Okay,
have that in hand.
Thank you. All right, Laura, you're next up.
Thanks. Yeah, to actually jump on Peter's question. So have we ever, this is actually just came to mind because I'm looking at John's drawing. Have we ever looked at the potential of having two entrances into the space? So if the DOT gives you a standard throat, then you have like a one-way directional, so one-way entrance and one-way exit. And maybe that streamlines a little bit of the entrances and exits of the larger trucks. That's my first question. And then the second question is, if a lot of this really actually has to do with the slowing of the traffic into the entrance of the site, then how are we able to mitigate and or basically control the vegetation that happens that's towards kind of going, I guess, north on Route 9, past the entrance, down the hill on Route 9, because I drove by that the other day and I was realizing the overgrowth. And I know that you have proposed what the cutback needs to be, but how do we then enforce that or make sure that that's taken care of?
Sure. I'll answer your second question first, because then you can remind me what your first question was. Oh, the two driveways. We have not asked the DOT, could we have two driveways? We could. Will it make things better? It's a hard question to answer. I know the DOT has a preference for single driveways, and the theory from engineers is that fewer driveways means fewer conflict points. Fewer conflict points is better. But when you get down to the micro level, the difference between one driveway with 20 trips and two driveways with 10 trips on each of them is so minor, it's inconsequential. So we haven't asked the DOT. I'm not sure whether we would just end up with two driveways. They'd probably be as big as this one anyway, because you use most of the driveway to come in or go out. And would it be better? I honestly don't know. And your second question, it would be, first of all, it's the responsibility of the municipal agency who maintains the road, typically plows it and does the street side vegetation to make sure that it's safe for all users. And probably twice a year, somebody goes by and mows the edge of the road. But we, on our plan, on the site plan, that if you approve it, there is an area and a notation, and the owner of this site is required to make sure that the vegetation in that area, which is in the right of way and not necessarily in front of his site, is kept clear from blocking sight lines. And so if it grows up and is a problem, then somebody would report it to the building department, and the building department would pull the plan out and show it to him and say, you'll be in violation if this isn't cleared by tomorrow, or 48 hours, or some reasonable amount of time.
May I add to your comment a little bit, John? If we did have a second driveway, as we would necessarily have to be to the north, and it would then also be reducing the site distance significantly across the frontage of that lot.
That's something we would have to look at, yes. And to answer Heidi's previous question, if I may, the traffic volumes that we used, I'll pick the highest one, but we studied the morning and the evening, and the morning is higher, and we evaluated the intersection with 1,386 vehicles passing it. And the latest data that I have from the DOT is from 2017. And there were 1,141 vehicles passing the site at that time. So we increased it by a little more than 20% from 2017. That's the best estimate that we can do under the circumstances. I wish, like all of you, that we could return to normal and we could have our usual fights over traffic.
Laura, anything else?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, and then Neil Tillman, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Neil. So we had what, 1 or 2 site visits to this? I think it was 2, right? We went there.
We actually went back a third time because we had a question about what the existing site distance was with the bushes that were out there. So we went the first time when we conducted our study. Then we had the question on, well, we may have combined those 2 visits now that I recall. Both the questions were asked at the same meeting. So that was 2 site visits, correct?
So we've had a chance to stand in the throat of, which is sort of what we're talking about. And I remember, I don't know, John, I don't know, it was you or Glenn, and looking at it and thinking, well, it's a little tight, and just standing there and looking at it. So I'm glad to hear Glenn say, and that was the 2 things. It looks a little tight, and you might want to think about mountable curves. So I think they've done that, and so I'm feeling like they've done what we've asked them to do. The other angle on this is I'm a little hesitant to hold the applicant responsible for what drivers' reactions might be to them having to slow down and take a right turn or a left turn. I mean, I think that's something that's outside of their control, and I don't see how we can hold them accountable for how people might react to losing 10 seconds of their commute or something like that. I'm hesitant to go there. I know that when I'm traveling north on Route 9 and I've gone past 84 and I'm in the right lane, I know that the car in front of me is going to take a right turn into Dunkin' Donuts. I just know it. It's just you have to sort of know what the traffic patterns are. So I'm a little hesitant to hold the applicant responsible for how people might react to whatever they install. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Neil. So, Neil, your comment reminds me about when we had the Valhalla traffic accident on Metro North, and a fellow board member said, we can't legislate them for not knowing to not go on the railroad tracks. Kind of hard, but I hear your point. It's an interesting one. So, Steve, I'm loath to do straw polls because that's the same as taking a vote, but without the obligation. But I also want to continue to give any more opportunities for this board to not ask questions, but to direct or clarify or be more explicit about what they would need to see to approve this project. So I just want to give one more chance for any board member to state anything, because we're going to have to come to a discussion in the next meeting and vote on this thing. Because I think, to Neil's point, we have had many opportunities to discuss this, and at some point we've got to make a decision. And so it's not an individual decision, it's a collective one, it's a vote. But I just want to give anyone else a chance to ask the applicant to do anything else. Kim has made a very clear, if not easily executable decision to say, have a shorter truck. We've heard Laura suggest maybe an alternative entrance. John, as I was looking at your picture, I don't remember exactly what the land is like to the south, but there is an obvious question about whether more land could be acquired to the south to create a more gradual entrance or a wider space to enter into. I have no idea. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please finish your thought.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, the usual practice of the board, as you're well aware, is to direct that an approval resolution be prepared and then have it submitted for the next meeting. And usually the board votes on it, and that's all there is to it. In this particular instance, what you might want to do is direct that a draft approval resolution be prepared, and then treat it as truly a rough draft and have it circulated to the board well in advance of the meeting, and have everybody look at it. And then at your meeting, just kind of read through it. And if somebody wants to propose a condition or propose that some item be eliminated or some other provision be added, some language be added, that would be an opportunity for everybody, every board. And you could go around the board and say, Neil, do you have any thoughts? Laura, do you, and so forth and so on. And people could propose things. And if the rest of the board does not agree with that or doesn't want to see it in there, then it gets left out. But if everybody says, gee, you know, that would be a good thing to add, then you would actually write that in, and you can adopt the resolution with the, you know, appropriate language or conditions. Just stretch it out a little bit in this instance so that everybody can really see what it is they're approving.
Can I ask a question? Can I just ask a question there? We don't have all of the, I don't think we're ready to approve it because we don't have all of the clarifications of Ron's, you know, the Ron's list here, the steep slope, the drawings for the steep slopes, landscaping, the stormwater, you know, so I don't know if we're even ready for that.
I'm not suggesting that the resolution be adopted. I'm suggesting that you get a draft resolution to work off of.
Okay.
And as more information comes in and it gets completed, you can say, gee, I want to add this. The roundtable wouldn't necessarily be the immediate precursor to a vote on it. It might be, all right, everybody talked about that. Let's see a revised draft and we'll look at it next month, you know, or if you're waiting for more information to come in. I just think it might be better to have something in front of the board to work off of sooner rather than waiting until, gee, we're ready to vote on it at the next meeting and you don't have anything in front of you to look at. This is a little bit of an unusual application. I mean, it hasn't been POS-decked or anything like that. Trying to get through to a negative declaration and treat it like you would any other site plan, but it does have this one substantial issue. And look, if you don't want to do it that way, that's certainly fine.
Well, Steve, my only hesitation about your recommendations, I'd like to give the applicant the opportunity to take some of this feedback back. Kim's comments, Laura's comments, and maybe explore some other mitigation. Glenn, go ahead, please.
We have I spoke with Ron earlier in the month, and we do have a revised, not a revised landscaping plan, but the landscaping plan has been enhanced to give more clarity to that particular issue of the neighbors seeing the building. And I do have Nick Puda, the landscape architect, here ready to talk about that. So we might be able to clear that particular question up, or at least give the board members something to look at in the interim. I don't know what, I know you have a time limit on this. I don't know how close we are to it, but.
If I could speak for just a minute,
10 more minutes.
the understanding is that tonight we're just trying to identify concerns and possible mitigation that should be considered. But as I prefaced this item on the agenda earlier, the applicant's been provided with this entire list. And it's at least my expectation that they're going to respond in some written form or a plan form to show the information to the best of their ability in terms of how these issues either are addressed on the current plans or can be mitigated with enhancements to the plan. So I fully expect additional material to come in from the applicant to attempt to resolve some, if not all, of these concerns.
Yeah, my opinion at this point is I don't feel like I'm going to put Steve, thank you for your suggestion. I think I'm inclined to not ask for a motion to prepare documents because I do feel like there are a number of questions that have been raised. I think we should allow the applicant to take those to heart and adjust their plan as accordingly if they choose not to. It's not the first time we've not had an applicant take our guidance before, but that seems like, and I'm by the way, I'm happy to take a vote if folks would like to vote on whether we'd like to have them have Ron prepare some documentation for us, but it seems like there may be some adjustments to the plan between now and then. I'm happy to take a straw poll or happy to take a vote to see, because I think if I'm Glenn, I'm counting the votes as well.
You can ask if there's a motion, but you really shouldn't take.
Would anyone like to make a motion then to ask Ron to prepare materials at this point? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to, so Ron, I know you put this together. Thank you. And thank you everyone for your thoughtful comments. Glenn, John, I think I'd ask you to go back to the applicant, your client, and ask if there are other adjustments they'd like to make. Glenn, I'm happy to hear from the landscape. I think that's not the tall pole in the tent at this point, but if you think there's some value in him providing other commentary, I think I have no problem hearing that. I don't know if anyone else is opposed to hearing the landscape plan in more detail.
Well, if I would just as soon get that out on the table so your people could look at it, because we did do some work, so.
Great, without any, if anyone has any opposition, no opposition, that's fine with me.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen, and Nick Puder, if you give him the mic. It'll take me a second here. Landscape.
So
Hello,
while you're
everyone.
doing that, I just want to say one more thing. I think we were waiting to see the DOT, information from the DOT.
Oh, yes.
So when you make those submissions, we'd like to, see what their approval or disapproval or whatever.
Yep.
Glenn, I can share. I think I can share from here. Actually, it might be easier
Okay.
if I do that.
And everyone wonders why these meetings take longer.
Right.
Take the screen. I don't know. Let's do it.
Give me a minute here, actually. Sorry. I think I can do that. Yeah, actually, that's, oh, no, I lost your screen there, Glenn.
No, I just ended it. I thought
Okay.
I used my screen.
We might do that. I'm having a little trouble sharing from this end. So the comment we got in the memo, I guess Glenn had a verbal about this, was there was a question about the size of the plants that we showed in our sections. And we were asked to put them in at planting size instead of at a size in a few years. So what we did is we scaled these plants, and you can see there's a planted size in the section that Glenn's showing now. This is from the house in the rear to the west. So these are showing the pine trees and the birch trees at the planted size. And then behind them, you can see a white silhouette, and that's the size that they'll be at in 5 years. So the solid dark line that cuts through there, that is from the vantage point of a person standing on the ground in front of the house at each of these 4 section locations and pointing to the peak of the roof. So you can see that, when the trees go in, the pines especially, they're not going to block the view entirely of that building, but over the next several years, they'll grow and they'll easily obscure the view of the building. And that's the case in all of the sections. There is one house on the north side, which, Glenn, I think it's section B.
I'm sorry, say the word. What section?
The section on the north side.
Is, I don't know.
Maybe it's C there.
I think it is. Okay.
So, and in that case, one of the houses there is a little closer and it has more plants. But again, you can see, we have trees in most cases on both sides of the driveway where we can fit them. And then there's also, there's a substantial amount of existing vegetation in between some of these buildings already. That's, mature forest. But again, you can see, in that section C, we have a tree showing in color at the planted size, and then the 5-year height on both sides of that driveway. Some of those are the oaks, and that's the case all the way around the building. So hopefully that clarifies the question you had about planting size.
I want to just take for a second and just this particular word for the house in the back. I just wanted to, Ron had asked me a question about the screening to the dumpster. So this is going right towards the back of the building, I believe. And the dumpster is located here, right against the building. So it will affect, even without the screening, the dumpster will not be visible.
So, and we'll submit this as part of the official submission for your next package. And also on that first section there, that was, you'll see there, the plants there are, we had a kind of Glenn had a conversation, I guess, with the neighbor, and I don't know if the board had officially asked us to do more screening there, but we put more plants in on that back corner, which I believe we discussed last month, actually.
It was actually the owner that had that discussion.
Okay. So that's really the only change I have, and we'll make this a part of the official submission for you.
And I just want to note one last thing, is that the drainage, the SWIP, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, has been submitted to Ron in the interval.
Mr. Chairman, I found the DOT letter. If you would like to see it, I can put it up on the screen, but I will send it in to you anyway.
Well, we're at 45 minutes. I mean, why don't you flip it up, and then I think emailing it to Kelly and she can pass it on to the rest of us will be best. I don't know if having everyone do a group read is the best use of time.
I'll pop it up there quickly and then
Sure. Just show it to us. Be great. Yes,
So,
doesn't really say much. Yeah.
it's from DOT, and I have to find my little cursor here. There we go.
Great.
So we're working with them on the 33 foot. They asked us to try something else. That didn't really work for us. So we submitted the 33 foot, and we really wanted, it was submitted on November 9th, or we got this letter November 9th. And we were trying to get an answer for you today, but it's the DOT and they're swamped with other stuff.
I wonder, is a crazy notion, is it out of protocol to invite Mr. Brenner? I see a phone number, I see a regional office to come before us and chat with us a little bit at a meeting. What do you think about that by protocol, Steve?
Nothing wrong with it. I just would be very surprised if the DOT would participate in a Zoom meeting for a planning board. I mean, it could happen. I mean, he might, but I think you'd be more likely to get a letter from him than. But want to invite him? You can invite him. See what he says.
Does anyone like that idea? Anyone interested in that idea? It seems like it's a major topic of discussion. Anyone of any interest? And I'm happy to call him myself and invite him. Anyone from the board?
The appropriate thing is for the applicant to invite him, actually.
Oh,
That's
okay.
You direct the applicant to ask the DOT to appear, and they copy you on the letter or tell you about the phone call, and either DOT says yes or no. I mean, that's the planning board would not reach out.
Can I have a motion for that? And then we can
I'll make
debate
that
it.
motion.
All right, Kim, second. Okay, thank you, Peter. Let's discuss it. Any discussion about that idea? It's not the worst idea I've had today. I'll tell you later about the worst idea I had today. That'll be the second worst idea of the day.
Tell us now. We'll be gone.
No, joking.
Mute button for this guy.
All right, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, so we're going to direct the applicant, and Glenn is his agent, or John, maybe one of you contact Mr. Brenner and see if he can join us for our next conversation. And hopefully that, as well as taking the commentary that Ron has compiled in this evening's discussion, we can have another discussion in our next meeting and hopefully get closer to resolution. I do appreciate the applicant, Glenn and John, your patience with this one, but clearly you can tell the sentiment of the board is serious and not intentionally delaying, but trying to solve a matter. We all balance two things, of course, property rights with community rights, and those are things we take seriously. So thank you very much. Any last comments from board members?
Thank you all.
All right, thank you very much. All right, as my second recusal of the evening, I turn to second vice chair, who has the best goddamn name on this board, Neil Toman, meaning the first name, of course. And I ask Mr. Toman to take us through Flag and Snyder, please. Mr. Toman, you have the gavel.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. So, Ron, do you want to tee this up? I've got here applicant. We're familiar with this. Applicant is seeking a barn-like addition, consists of a family room, bedroom with bath, garden tool storage, greenhouse connected to a 4-bedroom house via covered pergola. Definitely an application where they read the rules. So we're putting in an addition. We had the site visit last weekend. Ron, you want to jump in? We've got a couple of referrals. We've got 3 referrals out: fire department, Department of Health, and the ZBA.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as Neil indicates, we conducted a site visit this prior weekend. I generated a memorandum trying to summarize the comments that were offered. If we back up for a second, the matters before you for a site plan approval, but it's also before the Zoning Board of Appeals, because there's variances attributable to the existing house on the property that requires variances. And that is still in progress with the ZBA. ZBA actually made a referral to you to seek comments before they take an action to vote on the variances requested. So the matter specifically before you tonight is to consider making a response to the ZBA on your opinion on the application. But separately, as I said, we've also generated a memorandum just to identify site issues that were identified during the earlier inspection. I did take the opportunity to share this with the applicant's representative. I've actually also today just taken the time to review the comments that were raised with the applicant's representative. I'll let him speak to that if he has any concerns about any of those matters raised. I think they're pretty much standard concerns of the board for this type of project. But I'll turn it over to the applicant's representative if he wishes to speak.
And that would,
Yeah,
and that would be who, Ron? That would be
That's David Spence.
David. Okay.
yeah. So I went through many of these items, and we are aware of all of these things that we know we need to do for final site plan approval. Just a couple notes. One is that we did receive approval from the Hudson Highlands Conservation Commission because of the easement. And I have filed that letter with Kelly and Ron. So that's available to you if you wish to take a look. They, of course, have given us conceptual approval on the project. They too are interested in knowing the final colors and materials on the barn, which we are prepared to present when the time comes. And some of the other things, the site engineering, we have our engineers on the ready. We're ready to pull the trigger. Our goal right now is just to get some level of confidence from the zoning board that this actually is a viable project, so that we can pull the trigger to then get all this engineering done for stormwater management, septic, so on and so forth. And then I know some of you were at the site the other day, and there were some questions on the grading. I'm happy to pull up a drawing if that helps, but I can also describe it. The intent of the barn is meant to sort of nestle into the landscape. So as you probably recall, there was the rear yard was slightly higher than the driveway itself, and the barn is meant to act as a retaining wall between the rear yard and the driveway. So those are indicated on the architectural drawings. And once we actually do the grading plan, we'll be able to provide more details for that. But our intent is to really limit site disturbance as much as possible in terms of grading and such. But of course, those elements will come once we are in front of you again for the site plan approval, which I assume will be in the next couple months. So we're just looking for, as requested by the zoning board, a letter of your comments so that we can sort of check off that box with them for those variances and then come back to you.
Okay, so Ron, let's, I guess we get some comments from the board and then you round them up and send them over to the ZBA.
It could be done that way for sure. Yeah, that very often Steve prepares those letters, but either one of us could.
Okay, well, let's get the comments from the board and then we'll let you and Steve hash out who's going to send them over to the ZBA. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay, Kim?
So can you remind me what the square footage of the existing house is and what the total square footage is going to be for this whole project?
Sure. Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Okay, are you able to see the cover sheet here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me zoom in. So the footprint, the total footprint will expand to the 2007 41, so a net change of 1,227 square feet. The total square footage, which accounts for all floors above grade, that is 1,762 is the net change.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having trouble understanding this. So the existing is the existing house,
That's correct.
and the proposed is the existing house plus the addition, or is that the proposed the addition?
That is the proposed addition.
Okay, so the addition's almost like twice as.
No, I'm sorry. No.
No,
It's the gross square footage. So
Okay.
the total square footage once constructed is 4,650.
All right.
So
That's
your existing is, I'm sorry, Kim, your existing is 2,888 and so then the addition is 1,762.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, obviously you're gonna have to, I mean, I think Ron's memo, covers pretty much everything that we talked about at the site visit. So I think that's all that's for the moment. I'm trying to get a sense of, this is a historic house, right? So just a sense of whether or not it's going to be completely overwhelmed by this addition.
Well, and I think that's why we took particular care in creating the addition in the way we did, to try to sort of glom onto the house with, many clients, will just add a family room and a master bedroom upstairs to the house. Whereas we wanted to sort of honor the existing structure and respect its current form, that's had many additions over the years since it was built, but just honor its current form and pull away from it with the second structure. And, we also sort of took cues from the area of farms and such, having a separate barn. And doing things like I mentioned before, as shown in these elevations, where you could see the rear grade sort of higher and the barn bermed in, to try to bring the scale of it down. We made particular care in keeping the ridge height lower than the house's own ridge height and such. So all of these elements are meant to try to help keep the scale of the barn, in keeping with the house. So yeah.
Now, one thing we don't usually talk about with houses, but given that, is driveways and parking. Did we ever talk about that, Steve? Is that appropriate?
This particular instance, it is, well, it always is for site plan, but particularly so here because the ZBA wants to know what you think of this project. So if you have concerns about the layout of the driveway and parking, it's the type of thing you might want to raise to them, as well as considering it yourself. Look, if you just have general sentiment, we think it's a good project, we have questions which we'll address, you could just say that and send them a copy of Ron's memo. But if there's something specific you want to point out to the ZBA, this is an opportunity to do that, and the ZBA is in fact asking for it.
Okay. So I think those are just my concerns are scale, and if it seems like when you have two separate buildings like this, there's an opportunity to have gatherings, to make sure that there's room in the driveway. So those are my comments.
Well, Kim, just so I understand, when you say scale, do you mean that you think that the addition's too much? Are you just, you're concerned about it, something that you want to look at in the course of site plan? I mean, I'm not sure how you want to communicate, what it is you want to communicate, if anything, to the ZBA on that.
Perhaps not.
No.
One note about the parking. or the driveway rather, we are reducing the amount of gravel that's in front of the house and in the proposed barn. So right now, you may recall the gravel sort of just went right up to the house and such, and we want to eliminate a bunch of that, get some lawn out in front of that. So so again, when we get into the details of the grading plan and such, we'll be able to work out those elements. But this is the current driveway configuration now. And we wish to eliminate, a bunch of it sort of up against the house here, and really just allow it to go to the garage portion of the barn.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Kim. I'm just going by my screen. So Heidi.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Other than what's set for, I was at the site visit, and what's set forth on the memo reflects my recollection of the discussion.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any questions other than those items.
Okay. And Peter?
No, I'm comfortable with all the questions that have been put together by Ron's memo, so I'm fine there.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Laura?
No, I'm good. I echo what Peter said.
Okay. Did I miss anybody?
You missed me.
Dennis?
Neil? Yeah, hi. I'm fine with everything.
Okay.
No comments, no questions at this time.
Okay, so I'll add my 2 cents. So Steve, this is a comment to the zoning board. And I was thinking about this. I think I talked to Heidi as we were walking away. I'm looking at this drawing, I'm looking at this application. It's really the perfect application. It absolutely pushes the boundaries of what is an addition by the letter. You've got the setbacks, you've got your square footage, you've got your connection. By the book, it's perfect application, and the design is such that it's expandable. It's really kind of brilliant. I mean, you could turn this into almost anything you wanted. And I could see the zoning board being concerned with this becoming, I mean, I told you last time around, this looks to me like a separate building. And I know that by the book, you've got it for an addition, but I think the zoning board is trying to maybe pull something else out of us here, because it's just, we're in this age of Airbnbs, and we're in this age of, which is a tough topic. I don't want to understate that, but as far as the feedback to the ZBA, I think it's worth saying something about that. And I don't know whether, we can't hold it against the applicant now, but is there something here that we want to look at as far as the usage of the building? I don't know. I mean, I wish that again, the ZBA is looking for our feedback, and so I just sort of wanted to throw that out. So that said, Ron, we're waiting on feedback from the fire department, and we're waiting on the fire department, health department, and of course the ZBA is waiting to hear from us, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna. So the next move. All right. So we asked Ron to make a resolution, so, sort of summarizing our comments and send it back to the ZBA.
Well, I don't mind that at all. I'll be happy to work with Ron on a brief letter to the ZBA. It doesn't sound like you have terribly many comments in regard to this. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Kim. I heard your comments. You're concerned about the size, the scale of the proposed addition, but is it something that you want to comment on negatively? Is it something that you just want to raise as an issue for consideration? Is it something you don't want to get into at all?
I think it's the latter, Steve. I think I feel like there's a comment here to be made about usage, and that's not our purview. That's not what we're here to do.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what the ZBA is looking for. It's not a use variance application. They're more concerned with, do you think that the size of the building will be out of keeping with other structures in the neighborhood? Or you feel that non-reflective glass should be required? earth tones? You feel that there's an issue with, I don't know, we'll go back to the driveway, the driveway design being, inappropriate for a building in this configuration, something like that. And maybe you don't have any comments along those lines, and that's fine. I mean, but the ZBA wanted to know if you did, and I'm a little confused.
I think the comments, they've solicited comments from the planning board, and I think we're giving them as best we can. If nothing else, just to have it on the record. So
I'm sorry.
I have another question then, relating to what Steve said. Let's say hypothetically, somebody came to us with this application and said, this is going to be an Airbnb. Would we then want to make sure there was enough parking, for example, for more than just a regular family's amount of cars? Would that be something that we would be, we ought to responsibly look into, since that's
well, under the town code, Airbnbs are the same as residential rentals. So really, unless, there was some reason to believe that the maximum occupancy of the house would result in parking problems, it's not the type of thing that you would get into, gee, what if they have a big party and invite 100 people? It's just not under the code, treated as a separate use than a residential use. So I don't know that I would go down that road.
I think it raises a question that, maybe we shouldn't, we shouldn't be taking it out on the applicant, but it's raising a question. It reminds me of the, several years ago when we had the application to put a Dunkin' Donuts in Cold Spring, and there was no law prohibiting a franchise. And then they sort of went after the applicant and say, well, we don't have a franchise. We don't want franchise. Well, sorry, but that's not the rule. So it goes in, and I sort of feel like we're in that same zone now where we're looking at something that doesn't quite feel right. Can we stop the applicant? Probably not. Is it something that we ought to be thinking about? I think so. Steve, is that something we want to try and work, if they're asking for our comments, is that something we want to talk about or no?
Those are comments that you would want to address to the town board to suggest possibly some sort of a zoning amendment in regard to, or land use amendment in regard to Airbnbs or temporary rentals like that. In regard to the ZBA on this application, they want to know, what do you think of the house itself? What do you think of the proposed additional construction? If the answer to that is, we don't have any significant comments, here's a copy of Ron Gaynor's technical comment memo, do your ZBA thing and, good luck to you, that's fine, but if you do have a comment, oh my gosh, this would be out of place, gosh, you got to look out for that issue here, they want to hear that. But if you don't have any of those warnings, concerns, there's no sense, beating around the bush trying to come with a letter to them.
Okay, so I think if I had a comment, I'd say that David Spence did a very good job putting this application together.
I think Mr. Spence would be very happy to hear that, but I don't think ZBA is looking for that type of comment, notwithstanding Mr. Spence's ability.
Steve, they asked, so.
That's what you wanted to say, that is what it will say.
Well, all right. A couple other things on this, and this has to do with their application and has to do with the next one at Route 9. Now, we did the site visit, and this is not any fault of the applicant. This is just sort of something I think we might want to be aware of. When we went there were no stakes out. We didn't have any real feel for where the building was going to be. And as we walked through it, we were able to sort of put together that there had to be a fair amount of excavation to get down to grade to do what you want to do. So I think I'm going to ask that maybe as we schedule site visits moving forward, we think about asking the applicant to put out stakes or some sort of visual indications of what we're looking at, and to sort of help us out a little bit. So that, and then of course there's a fair amount of excavation that has to happen in order to get this addition to grade. David, we talked about, I think with Mr. Flagg, about, he may have some septic work to do. You might want to, I mean, this is just me. If you have to move that kind of product out to get your elevation down, you might want to think about moving in the back of the house to solve any septic issues that you have with the ZBA. So you know what I mean? Just like move some of that product down, and I think you'd have a better shot with the ZBA if you could show them that you were able to build that area up, because it looked a little shallow. Ron, I think you and I talked about this. They may be fine, but that backyard didn't look like it could handle much more of a septic system. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. So I guess moving forward, Steve, we ask Ron to prepare a memorandum for the ZBA.
A letter, yes.
Okay. So we need a motion on that?
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Yes, you do. Go ahead, Laura. I'm sorry.
No. To actually just go back to what Neil said, and then Steve, what you just said about the ZBA. I mean, are they actually looking for us to make recommendations or accept and agree to the appropriateness of the design of what's being put forth? I mean, they're basically asking us to say, well, is this appropriate within its historical context?
Well, certainly that's one thing that they are looking for you to comment on, no doubt about that. The ZBA is not asking you to make findings that it has to make in regard to the variance. They're asking if there are any issues that you see which they might want to take into consideration. And among those are whether this will have adverse impacts on neighboring properties, or whether it'll have adverse environmental impacts, whether a smaller variance would suit the applicant's needs, things along those lines, which you have more expertise in dealing with as far as designs of buildings do than they do. So you don't have to go through what's required for grant of a variance. Just tell them what you see as the issues, if you even see any, with this application. The answer is, it looks like pretty much a ground ball. I don't see any significant design issues here or land use issues here. That's fine. Like I said, send them a copy of Ron's memo. The board has no substantial issues on this, other than to compliment Mr. Spade on his plans. That's fine.
I just, well, I don't know, Steve. I think we're looking at a building that where Kim started us off. We're looking at a 2,800 square foot building with a 1,700 square foot addition. And if it was a barn, or something, that would be one. I know you're trying to make it look like a barn, but you're not. You're making it a living space. And again, the fact that it's attached just by a breezeway somehow makes it okay. I don't know. I just, again, I don't know where we take this up. But if the zoning board is asking for our feedback, I would, I feel like I want to put it in there. And I don't, just for nothing else, just because that's the way this conversation's going.
Well, a large addition isn't necessarily something that's incongruous with the existing development. Just because what's there is small doesn't mean that you can't add something substantial to it if what you're adding is in keeping with the architectural style and the overall aesthetic appearance of what's there. Okay, you don't look at a building and say, well, it's small, so that's all it can ever be. You look at the architecture and you say, does this look like a natural, organic development from this property? Is this something that might have been there from day one? How does it look overall? And if the answer to that is it looks okay, that's great. But if the answer to that is, geez, you're totally changing this thing, nobody would recognize it for what it's been historically, that's a concern. And that's the type of thing you might want to, if that's how you feel, tell the ZBA.
I have a question about that then, this just because I'm interested in how this all works, right? So if we don't have any design standards in our code, correct?
No.
Like we have no historic review board, we have no anything like that. So if somebody
building
wanted,
code, but I mean that aside.
Yeah, but so if somebody had a small building that was, a Victorian, and they wanted to put a giant glass box behind it that was a different architectural style, we would naturally be inclined to say no to that?
Well, The short answer is probably yes, but sometimes you can mix architectural styles and the result is very aesthetically pleasing. Sometimes you mix them and the result's absolutely horrendous. So you have to use your judgment, and you have to talk with your consultants about whether what they're proposing to construct. Aesthetic is a kind of a ephemeral term. It's hard to say the aesthetic of this is good, but it's a term, and it's something that's within the purview of the planning board to consider. So if you look at something and you say it's okay, or I really like it, that's just fine. But if you look at something and you're like, oh my God, that's just the appearance of that will be just terrible, that's the time you can step in and say the aesthetic impacts of this are unacceptable.
So you're saying that our comments should be restricted to aesthetics and not necessarily use?
Yes, you should not get into use. That's not an issue before the ZBA, and it's a non-issue in this.
All right, so, right, okay, so use is outside the purview of both us, well, not the zoning board, but for us.
They're not proposing anything other than a residential use, so I mean, it's just not an issue on the
Right,
application.
okay, so this is something that maybe we need to, again, I'm really hesitant to hold this against the applicant, but I don't think we can ignore where this is headed. And maybe we need to talk about this in another format, or
Well, where this is headed? What is your concern?
Airbnbs. Airbnb and building something that is so easily modified into a full separate building that would have no impact on the existing building.
Well, perhaps the applicant would agree to a condition under which they don't engage in short-term rentals.
Oh, here we go. All right. So that's an option.
Well, they would have to agree to that. I don't know that that's something that you can impose unilaterally.
All right.
I have one more
Can I
question.
just
Let
add-
Laura answer,
Oh,
yeah. Go ahead, Laura.
Sorry, I just want to add, so to Kim's point, because we don't have any design standards, and I really would like to avoid the whole idea of like going down an aesthetic route, because that's purely subjective. But to everybody's point, if we were to really look at it from a massing standpoint, right, we're talking in square footages, but 2,000 square feet in a barn is massive. And when you actually compare that to the existing building, once it's built, that massing aspect of it may not be appropriate for that particular context. And I'm not quite sure. So I don't know if it could be helped with more elevations and or whether or not that building is nestled into the landscape because you're actually digging and excavating and then it nestles into it. So I don't know if when it's seen from a perspective of viewpoint, the massing may not be as big as I can kind of visualize it in the drawing. So I think that, what we're talking about is whether or not that new addition, contextually makes sense for that area and at that moment, because it isn't right at the intersection.
It is, but you have renderings and you've been out to the property. I'm not sure what else you can really require the applicant in regard to that. I think you kind of have to make a decision based on what you have, unless you can think of something else to request from them.
True. I mean, well, yeah. Okay.
So I have one more question, Steve. This lot is 5 acres. Am I right about that? Is it 4.5 acres?
It's just about 5.
It's about 5 acres. And the zoning, which is it? It's in rural residential zoning?
Yes.
Okay. And so what's the minimum lot size for if you were to build a new house in rural residential? Does anybody know what that is? It's at
I believe it's 10 acres.
10 acres.
District.
So I guess my question is, are there any if somebody wants to put an addition on a house that's in a zone that was once smaller, as everybody's house was, and now it's a zone that requires more acreage, but you're making an addition, is there any, you're grandfathered? Is that right, Steve?
If you meet the setbacks, you're grandfathered. The existing underside lots are grandfathered as long as you meet the setbacks.
Right. And so there's no maximum house size. So as long as you're meeting the setbacks and planning board looks, things could just get bigger and bigger, right?
Well, they could, but I mean, there's a site plan requirement for houses over, 3,000 square feet, Ron?
Mm-hmm. Yep. 3,000, it is 3,000.
All right, so I mean, there's that control on it. It's not like it's unlimited. I mean, if the size of the house was completely out of control, then I think you could say, you know, no, that's just, we're not going to grant you site plan for that.
Okay.
But it would have
Thank
to be
you.
quite an extreme.
No, I know, but you know, you've seen those houses in Massachusetts that started this big and they go
Oh, yeah.
through the whole lot, you know.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you remember when we had an application, I think a couple of months ago, where the it was on Route 9, I believe, and the person had a mobile home on the property, and I thought that
Richie,
Richie. I thought there was discussion that you couldn't have a second basically structure on the same property, or was it just that I thought that Kim actually mentioned something about the mobile home that was shown on the property and that would not necessarily be legal. Is that just a totally different? I mean, this is almost like a second family is going to have a house on this piece of property in this
Well,
current application.
it's proposed as a single family home. So this is just different from Richie. I mean, it's proposed as a single family home, not as 2 dwelling units.
The breezeway connects it, so that makes it a single family home.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also people are allowed to have, you know, just for, you know, and Steve, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think people are allowed to have, say, caretakers' houses occasionally and
Under the code,
accessory apartments.
Under the code, you can have multiple uses on a single lot, which would mean 2 single family homes on a lot, as long as you meet all the setback requirements and lot area requirements. If they're attached, you come to a point where they become multiple dwellings and wouldn't be allowed uses. But if you had a big enough lot, you could have, in theory, 4 or 5 single family homes on it. That'd be one hell of a big lot, but I mean, it's possible you wouldn't need to actually subdivide.
Okay, well, I think we've gotten some good feedback here. Is anybody else? Well, let's go around again. Does anybody have anything else to say? And do we want, and does anybody have anything to tell Steve, to tell the ZBA?
Can I make just a couple
Sure, David,
responses? You know, so I mentioned this when I first presented the project, that the existing house, it has 4 bedrooms, but they're considered small bedrooms. So when the owner came to us looking for that 5th bedroom for when their family does come and visit, you know, we looked at trying to add on to a house where 3 sides of it have a wraparound porch, and we wanted to honor all of that. So our whole strategy in order to achieve this 5th bedroom and the family room was to create this sort of barn-like structure. And it wasn't lost upon us that we could still enclose this breezeway and make it completely conditioned. In fact, the breezeway can be a whole room, and we would still fall within all the setback requirements, like this thing can get even larger if it, you know, in terms of that connector, but that's not what we're intending to do. And again, it's not, I'm just a little concerned about the talk of concerns of Airbnb. I understand it's an issue for many towns and such, but it's just, it's not in any conversations we've been having. It's not in the plans. It's not our intent. And it's just difficult to, I guess, listen a little bit if that's the motivation to try to come up with issues to hold the project back because of a fear of their Airbnb. I'm just a little nervous about that. I mean,
David, I think I've tried to be clear about this. I have no intention, nor do I think any of my my fellow board members have any intention of holding up your application because of this.
Yeah.
I do think that it proposes, or that it presents questions. And then when the ZBA comes to us and says, what do you think? We have to tell them. So as I said before, I think your plan checks all the boxes. I think you obviously did your homework. You're building the biggest thing you can. And, but it does raise questions. I don't see it. I don't see it going that way where I don't see where we have grounds to hold up your application for laws that don't exist. So I want to, you know, sort of, we're using you as an example. So for a larger discussion, and the discussion that we're having really has more to do with the planning board and then our relationship with the ZBA. So let's just sort of go from there. It just raises lots of flags, lots of questions, and so anyway, Ron. So Ron, as far as moving forward, where do we go from here?
Again, I think Steve and I can work together to generate a letter to the ZBA from this board, expressing your thoughts and probably enclosing the sidewalk comments. And that's all a matter that's before you today. Once the ZBA acts, it may eventually come back to you to process the site plan application, but that's not what's before you today.
I understand. Okay, we got a little off track. I apologize.
Neil, can I ask one question here?
Sure, Peter.
Which board has authority over design issues?
Any board has authority over design issues. However, design issues can be relevant to ZBA's determination of setbacks or lot coverage or lot size variances. Because if you go to the ZBA and you say I have an undersized lot and I want to build this, you know, extensive amount of square footage on it, the ZBA may say, oh, now wait a minute, all you want here is a single family dwelling. You don't need a variance for that many square feet. You're going to have to scale it back. Or perhaps a building of that size isn't appropriate with that small of a rear yard setback, side yard setback, whatever it may be. So it plays into the ZBA's decision, although they don't have the final say on it, the planning board does.
I see. So it's not really a question of aesthetics. It's more of a question of proportion and whether or not it fits into the landscape and things like that.
Well, aesthetics would play into it to the extent that if you had, for example, a neighborhood of upscale homes where everybody had a certain setback and a certain amount of square footage, and somebody wanted to come in and have, you know, undersized setbacks and build a very plain looking home, which just would be not in keeping with the appearance and character of the neighborhood, the ZBA would be within its rights to say, well, the variance you're seeking are completely out of keeping with the appearance of the neighborhood. Because of the aesthetics, we're not going to grant this.
Okay.
But it's got to be pretty extreme for that type of thing to be upheld. I mean, ZBA's really got to have a good reason, if that's the only reason, for denying the variance.
Why was this particular house singled out for this type of examination?
I don't really know what why the ZBA chose to ask your input on this one. I suspect, and it's just a suspicion on my part, that they were concerned about potential environmental impacts, which is something that they do not have a lot of expertise on. And like I said, just building concerns about the structure. The breezeway may be a little bit of a unique thing. I don't know if that's what triggered them or not, but they wanted to know what you thought of the building and what you thought of the potential environmental impacts of this development.
Right. It's also a substantial addition to a building sitting on Old Albany Post Road, which is on the National Register of Historic Places.
I'm sure that played into it as well.
I would imagine Mr. Spence could probably tell us the answer to
that. Well, I feel, so we presented to the zoning board twice, and they acknowledged that the variances we sought were pretty common in terms of the existing house being over the front yard setback due to its age, the lot size, so on and so forth. So they seem to be all in accord with the application. And to be honest, I felt that they were moving in a direction of actually accepting the application so that we can go to the next step. When they opened up for public comment, there were a couple neighbors, including Mr. Zuckerman, that spoke up, that brought the conversation about Airbnb and other issues such as that. So that was the moment that the zoning board decided to seek an opinion or a comment from the planning board. And so here we are. That was what the recommendation from the attorney was, to write a letter to you guys for that recommendation.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time on that one.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments on this? We're pushing 9:20 right now. Do we have any more comments? And maybe Steve, you could, the next move is to prepare a resolution for the ZBA. Oh, I'm sorry, a memorandum for the ZBA.
Well, as I understand it, and you and Ron can correct me if I'm mistaken, what the board's pleasure is to have a rather plain letter sent over saying that you have no substantive comments, that Mr. Spence did a good job with the plans, and here's a copy of Ron's sidewalk memo, which voices the sentiment of the board to the extent that it's processed the application so far. I just hand it back to the ZBA with that. If that's what the board wants to do, there's nothing further to do tonight. You can't schedule it for a public hearing or anything because you have to see how the ZBA proceedings turn out first.
Is that all we can do? We can only add the comments from Ron and then sort of a generic approval. We can't really add any of the dialogue that we've had tonight.
Well, tell me what you want to add and we can add it. I mean, I just haven't seen anybody say this is what I want in that letter.
Okay. Anybody want to tell Steve what to put in the letter?
Well, Steve and Ron, whatever.
I just think we have to hand over Ron's comment.
I'm sorry, Kim, say again.
Oh, I said, I think we just give them Ron's memo.
Okay. Can I hear a motion for Ron and, or Ron to prepare a motion for the ZBA?
I'll make the motion that Ron sends his memo to the ZBA.
Do I hear a second? Second, Peter, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm looking.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And I vote aye, so.
Aye.
All right, thank you. I'll hand it back to Mr. Zuckerman. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Andrew.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, we're going to end this in 37 minutes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 more actions on the docket. For those from the Desmond Fish Library, I just want to suggest there's a good chance we don't get to you tonight. I have two comments I want to make related. We are going to have a December meeting. I've already checked with our colleagues, my colleagues, you guys. We're going to have a December meeting. Hopefully Ron and Steve can have the pleasure of your company in that meeting. And with that, we are gonna, I've offered, and I don't know if Davis McCallum is still on this list here, but Mr. McCallum, I believe you've heard from Glenn that we are not taking the Shakespeare Festival tonight. There's just absolutely no way, as I told Ron ahead of time, or Glenn, that we'd ever get to it tonight. But we will put the Shakespeare Festival first on the meeting for next time, unless we don't get to Desmond Fish tonight, and then we will start with the Desmond Fish Library and then go to Shakespeare next time. This reminds me a lot of the leaky bucket problem. The water falls out faster than you can put it through the top, except we have the opposite problem. Water does not fall out fast enough when water comes through the top. So we have a stuffed bucket problem. Speaking of that, let's get to Route 3622, Route 9. We all had the pleasure of visiting that site over the weekend. Ron, what is our step for this evening at this point?
Again, the board just accomplished a site visit. I memorialized the comments that I heard from the site visit in this memorandum that the entire board has. Also taking the opportunity to forward it to the applicant. It's really a matter for the board to review the comments, understand if there's anything else they wish to identify or highlight from the memo. And from my perspective, I would expect that the applicant will be responding to the points raised just for the board's edification. And then when he returns and provides comments on those concerns raised, the board would be in a position to start moving the project forward.
Steve, anything to add?
No, I agree with Ron. I think you need to have more input from the applicant before this will be ready for a public hearing. You look over what's in the site walk memo. It's obvious that there's a couple outstanding issues.
Okay, I'm going to add one. I did speak to Max Garfinkel today, representing the Conservation Board, and they have not had a chance to draft their memo. So Adam, this is, I guess, is new news. So I apologize for not, but I just talked to him this afternoon. There, I guess in Ron's memo, he outlines the notion of protecting of fertilizers, salts, and the like. And I believe, although they haven't had a chance, the Conservation Board is going to write a note saying that they believe a structure, I forget the term he used, but something related to, you know, when you have the road, the guys who put salt in the road, what would you call those guys? The road crews, whatever you want to call them.
Sure.
Some sort of facility that has both a bottom and a top to store those kind of bulk materials was something he was describing. They're going to make a recommendation for.
Absolutely, yes. And in the site plan, we've shown to this point, we've shown some storage units which would be open, and these would be more for, you know, aggregates or other things that would potentially need to be stored by a potential tenant. We have shown a hoop house structure, which is we spoke about quickly in the field, just a simple steel semicircular frame with a canvas over the top of that that would could potentially be used for exactly as you're describing, having a solid bottom, solid foundation, and be completely enclosed. That might be used for potential salt storage. But as to the potential method for storing any of the other materials that we talked about, as far as the special use permit, those we could certainly clarify and provide any detail as to the means by which those materials might be stored.
Thank you. Board members, any comments on Ron's note? Do you want to amplify anything that did not resonate with you from the site visit?
So, have we classified this yet? I can't remember. Is this a minor project, a major project?
No, those were accomplished at the original meeting. They were
So what is it?
It's a major project, requires
Okay.
a public hearing.
Okay, so in the major project application, it says, let me see, because my notes are a little moved around. Okay, so it says in the highway commercial, like part 2B, I think, in the highway commercial district, a strip of land not less than 20 feet in width and located in the area required for a building setback from a residence district boundary line or all of such setback area on the lot, if less than 20 feet in width, shall be left and maintained in its natural state if already wooded, or shall be landscaped with evergreen trees planted to grow into a dense evergreen buffer strip within 5 years. So that would apply to the back. And we
That's
talked about
exactly right.
landscaping.
That's exactly right.
It
We
doesn't apply to
identified-
the north side.
Well, we had identified the concern over the almost the entire occupancy of the site and the clearing of all of vegetative growth that exists along all boundaries.
Right.
It's very significant in the rear because of the residential activity on that side of the property, but it pertains to all sides as well.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, you know, the 20 feet in width at least.
Right.
Was mentioned. And then the other, in the same application packet, 1J, under layout and design, it says metal buildings that are principal buildings larger than a small storage building in an unobtrusive location shall be of color consistent with earth tones, shall have sufficient fenestration and trim to break continuums of metal wall areas, and shall have brick, stone, wood trim, or composite materials providing a similar appearance and features combined with the basic metal enclosure. So since this building that's proposed is, you know, runs the entire width of the property and it's so large, I think it's really important that we make sure we understand what that's going to look like. And I know that's in your memo, but I just wanted to amplify it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we fully intend to share material color swatches and and other materials to, make sure it's clear what the look of the building will be. And that's forthcoming with future submission as we further develop the project. I had a question. Are you able to see? I switched screens over to the board had requested an overlay of the project over the aerial. Did that switch over in the share? Everyone can see that?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. So, and just a point of clarity, there was some question when we were on the site as to the zoning. Based on the published zoning map, all of the surrounding directly adjacent lots fall within the highway commercial zone, with the exception of this piece of this lot here. So this is the residentially zoned lot that's adjacent. So I just wanted to make that clear. I don't know that it was clear when we met in the field.
No, I understand your point, but we're hoping you have some appreciation for the residential property immediately to the northeast corner as well.
Yes.
That's an active residential property, right?
Absolutely, yes. And so, and I think I mentioned this past Sunday when we were on the site, the reason for some of the plant selections was specific to being sensitive to the idea that, that we do have a residence on this lot here. We can see that a good amount of that tree buffer does come up on their side of the property line. That being said, we have specifically chosen evergreen trees that will grow more quickly and more densely, specific to this corner, in along this area here, for that exact reason.
I think at the sidewalk, I had also questioned whether there was a residential property to the north. Have you looked at that?
I have. There is not. This is owned by the same, as we discussed in the field. This is the same owner, and the zone is consistent. You have this lot here, which is the highway commercial, and then you get to East Mountain Road, and then beyond there, I believe it changes, but I'm not sure. But this lot here to the north is also in the highway commercial.
Can I ask a question, Steve? Does it matter if the lot is zoned residential if there's a residence on it? I mean, does that?
Not for your purposes as far as that goes. If there's a residential property adjoining it, your concerns for protecting it in the course of reviewing the site plan are exactly the same as if it was zoned residential. Now, sometimes under the code, when you have commercial properties, abutting residential properties, there's a buffer requirement. Obviously, since the zoning isn't residential, there would be no mandatory buffer requirement, but you'd certainly, if you think it's appropriate, be within your authority to say, we want to see, a planting here or a screening fence or whatever it might be to make sure that there's not adverse effects to this neighboring property. I answer your question.
Yep, thank you.
Any other things about the memo that you didn't recognize or want to amplify? Okay. All right. So it sounds like our applicant needs to take those things and incorporate them into his next rev for discussion in our next meeting. Any actions, Ron, you suggest we take other than to return for our next conversation?
All right, no, I would just await the applicant's replies to the memorandum.
Okay. Adam, you okay with that?
Yeah, thank you. And anything else, any other questions, I'm happy to answer, but in the meantime, we have some things to chew on, and we'll be back next month.
Yeah, my sense is we'll see that. We'll then vote to have a public hearing, and if in fact we do that, we'll probably do that in January. Okay.
Very good.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. On to coming. Ron, this is Glenn. Hi, Glenn. All right. So this is apparently Ron's memo. We sent this to ZBA. It's back to us. I don't think we did much with it when it was here last.
You're in a tin can, Neil.
Neil, yeah, we're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, absolutely.
Hello? It's only been, we're only in the third hour. I'm fine. I'm doing great. I'm good. Don't worry about me. Oh man. All right. So sorry. Read Ron's memo. I think we didn't do much with it last time. They went to the ZBA. They're back to us. Lot line adjustment. Glenn, do you want to give the highlights, please?
Yes, I'll take the screen if that's okay.
Please.
There we go. Okay. It's an odd sort of situation where we have two pieces of property owned by the Cummings. I think the couple, William and Laura Cummings, own one piece, and I think one of them owns the other. I would have to look to check exactly, but essentially we don't have enough property to subdivide this land, but we have two houses on the one lot, and we're looking to adjust the lot line so that they share a driveway and each house is on a separate lot. They combine the two parcels that they have into a single parcel and subdivide it. Let's see if I can figure out how to make this thing get bigger. So the two lots, I can't make two conforming lots. I can make, so we got a variance to reduce the frontage on one lot and reduce the area on the other lot. That allows us to put a property line down the common driveway and separate the facilities onto one lot and onto the other. Ron's memo does mention a couple of things that he'd like to see on there and a couple of things that you might consider waiving, but I'm hoping that you can schedule a public hearing on the matter at this point because I think we've got enough information to answer the basic questions and we've solved the basic problems.
Okay, well, anything to add, Ron or Steve? Thank you, Glenn.
Again, the board has a memorandum from me on the matter. Board recalls that it was before the board a few months ago required the variances that Glenn described. Since they had to go to the zoning board of appeals, no actions were taken on the initial appearance before the board. So you have some basic housekeeping to resolve first. Concerning CEQA, it represents a type 2 action since it relates to residential properties. That's a determination you can make tonight. There's also a referral required to Putnam County Planning that hopefully can move forward. Then the other things typically addressed would be whether the board wants to have a site inspection to evaluate the project before you schedule a public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Steve, anything to add?
The ZBA did grant the variance. The resolution hasn't been filed yet, but that's just a ministerial matter. I think you can assume that the ZBA has acted. Ron's absolutely right. You have to make your 239M referral. That does not necessarily preclude scheduling a public hearing if that's what you want to do. You won't be able to vote on the application until the county gets back to you, but it doesn't prevent you from scheduling a public hearing if you want. Site visit is obviously up to the board. Look, it's your decision, and I'm sure Ron will have input on it, but from what I've seen of the comments, I think this is another pretty straightforward lot line change. And you have a lot on your menu, no doubt, for the next meeting, so maybe that plays into it. But it's, in my opinion, it's ready for a public hearing.
Board members' comments?
I agree with Steve.
So put that in a recording that we can play in the future. That was a good one. Other comments? Okay, I'm going to move ahead then and ask. I'm just going to go rapid fire. Can I get a motion for type 2 action pursuant to secret, please? Kim first, Peter second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Passes. Putnam County Planning, I believe, because of the backs up against the state land motion.
I'll make that
Kim,
motion.
Kim's in the pole position. Second, anyone? Peter, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, thank you. This point you brought up, Ron, about establishing whether any waivers from the plat information required can be considered. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to just do a blanket, yes, should we waive them? Is there specific stuff you want us to waive?
Yes, identified in the memo, and again, recognize that there's physically no improvements that will be accomplished by the lot line adjustment. So there's no site disturbances that are expected.
Yeah, I
so
see you
waivers
say no
would be-
well. So you're asking not to go to the trouble of listing rock outcroppings, yes? Is that what I'm understanding, et cetera?
Yeah, it's rock outcroppings, it's trees larger than 8 inches, it's identification of on-site soils. Basic criteria you'd be interested to have should there be any wholesale disturbances planned, but in this instance, there's not.
I don't know. Does anyone have a problem with waiving those requirements?
No.
No,
All right, can I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion, Neil.
Thank you, Dennis. Peter, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions, thank you. All right, site walk. Let's have a motion and we can debate it. Anyone want to make that motion for a site walk? No, good, great. We won't make that motion. And then finally, though, I think we generally do prefer public hearings. I can live without the traipse in the woods, and well, actually we can anyway, given our whole 10-person limit. That's a whole other topic. We can talk about it another time. That was a fun back and forth over the weekend, but I think we should have a public hearing. Can I get a motion, a public hearing, please? All
I'll
right,
second
Peter
that.
first, Dennis second. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Okay, so Kelly, I suspect we can just do one next in the December meeting. This will be, my guess is this will not be a standing room only discussion. So let's just put that in the next, as long as that's okay with you, Glenn.
Yes, thank you.
Fine. Okay, so we're good. Anything else, Ron? Steve?
No, nothing else.
All right, great. All right, let's move on to Riverview Industries. This is apparently back. Oh, it's Glenn Watson. Okay, Glenn. You want to talk to us about, maybe, I think we were there before COVID, so we had some new board members since then. So Laura and Heidi, I don't think were with us that day. So maybe you can give us an update on what's happened.
Yeah, you referred the matter to the Conservation Board. They took a couple of months to look at it. We revised the plan in accordance with all of their recommendations, actually. And we think we're in a position to have a public hearing on it. I'll just very quickly show you the original plan. If I can share my screen again. If I can make this mouse work again. The property's on Route 9. It's just south of my office. It's opposite Reichert's 2 buildings and the truck parts store, just south of the Best Blueprint. There's a private house right located immediately to the north. We had originally had the wetlands flagged, and the wetlands was flagged along this northwesterly portion of the front part of the property. When we went out there with the wetlands inspector, and we showed them what we didn't think was wetlands, he agreed. So wetlands flag was changed to the rear of the property. There's a significant wetlands in here. There's encroachment onto the wetlands in here. And what we had basically had was a roadway into the property and truck spaces for backing onto a parking lot. Parking lot would be used in conjunction with Reichert's properties, 2 properties across the street. one is directly across the street, one is 100 feet or maybe 200 feet up the road. So that was the basic layout. The idea has not changed, but the plan has changed as a result of our meeting with the Conservation Board. Now I'm going to put up the revised plan. I'll go over that quickly with you. The revised plan, what you can notice here, and let me just view the full screen. View. No, that's not what I'm view. Full screen. That's a little better. Because the wetlands was judged not to be wetlands in this northwest corner of the front part of the property, and because there was a significant concern for the damage that was done over the years here, we worked a new property, and because like it stores some trucks there and some material storage bins and stuff like that there, we agreed with the Conservation Board that we would move make it less steep and wider. And along with that, we've agreed with them that we would regrade the parking area so that it was going to drain to the northeast corner and into an oil separator in case there was any spills or anything like that, or drippings out of the truck that would be carried to an oil separator before the water was let go into the stream. We also agreed with them, and one of the reasons that the landscape plan is not there, we also agreed with them that we would work with the wetlands inspector to develop a program to restore this area that we're moving out of. And we came away from that meeting with an expectation that the board would be ready to approve the plan once you close the secret loop and ready to approve it. I know the letter I just saw today from Mr. Garfinkel to you didn't characterize it the same way I did, but I think it's just that we're coming at it from slightly different perspectives. So again, so that the program is to basically tidy up this place, neaten it up. I had suggested that we put a fence along the rear of this this parking area to prevent the parking area from getting bigger over time. The zoning board wanted a curb along this area so that the pavement wouldn't migrate into the wetland area. I talked with the applicant. What we're going to do is propose, and I think we have it on a plan, we're going to propose actually a concrete retaining wall, one of those ready rock walls. It looks like it's cultured block or contoured block, excuse me. The grading works. So we're at a point where we think we've accomplished something that will let the property still be used and restore and protect the wetlands in the back, and that we would have areas. Oh, I should have also added we would have specific areas where trailers might be parked, because he does collect a couple of things. When you were out there, you probably saw pallets. There was a pile of pallets, and what he does with the pallets is he burns it in a wood burning stove that drives his sandblaster. And we talked about him breaking them up and putting them in the trailer. We can put them in the trailer, but he says he tried breaking them up to save space. He said that just makes a big mess. I think I agree with that. Another trailer would be set aside for small metal parts. So as he cuts a metal part away from a truck, he throws it in the trailer, and eventually he gets a trailer load that he has pulled away and sells for scrap. So it gets recycled. So that's our whole story. I would like to move this to a public hearing. I think we're at a point where it could be done. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I might add one last thing is that there was a question in Ron's memo. I don't think that we have actually met with the DOT. I'll have to check on that. I may have to correct myself, but I don't think we have. But we have made an effort to pick the best site in the frontage in which to install curbs and control what today, as you might remember, is really an uncontrolled access. With that, I'll be happy to try to answer questions.
Ron, commentary you want to add or maybe amplify for your memo?
We're not
Very
hearing.
quiet, Neil.
All right, sorry, I don't know what's going on. My heater's on. Ron, you want to amplify anything from your memo?
Sure. The specific issues that the CB raised that I did not clearly couldn't establish were addressed on plan was the provision that the entire parking area be impervious. Has that been resolved, Glenn?
We're going to use the millings that are out there. So it'll be technically impervious, but it'll be millings. It's not going to be new asphalt.
Okay, well, I think the plan describes it as gravel. So,
No, it's millings.
okay. And then you were describing that in lieu of the fencing described by the conservation board that you're putting in this ready rock wall.
Yeah, we would put a ready rock wall in the exact space. It would be, it wouldn't be as high as a chain link fence, but it would be, it would act as both the curb and the fence.
Okay, and describe again, if you would, the resolution of the landscaping that the conservation board is interested in.
Yeah, we frankly we agreed at the meeting that we would work with Max to try and come up with a plan. There's some phragmites in this general area here that he wants taken out. We have to have a program for that. We've done that before successfully. And a restoration of the wetlands in the rest of this area so that we'll bring the wetlands back and get rid of some of the stuff. That plan is, we haven't approached Max on that yet.
Well, if the board is so disposed to schedule a public hearing, would the landscaping plan be resolved at that point?
Yeah, I would suggest that we schedule it for January. I just like to know it's done, and we'll have it done by then.
Okay.
And I think that the December meeting is sounding like it's full, and I don't think Mr. Reichert would have an objection to that.
Glenn, when are you going to be able to get these revised plans in? I mean, instead of putting in what the CB asked for, a chain link fence and curbing, now you're proposing this ready rock wall. I'm sure the board's going to want to see a detail on that.
Sure.
And in far enough in advance of the public hearing that if somebody's interested in this, they can come and take a look at it. When do you think you can get that in?
We can get it in the first week in December. I don't see any, well, no, the second week in December, we can get it in.
Actually, the issue with the ready rock wall, Steve, is showing on plan now.
Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't see a detail on that.
That came in. Yeah.
Did I miss it? All right, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, but if you want to hold it in January, that sounds like it'll be plenty of time if that's the board's pleasure. That would be fine.
Yeah, let's let the board decide that first before we.
Of course, just
Okay,
saying.
thank you. Thanks. Okay, other comments, Ron?
Now, again, the referrals have been made. We've never got any response back from DOT. County planning has moved it forward. Glenn, could you just reiterate what your conversations have been with DOT?
Like I started to say before, I haven't had any conversations. I'm not sure that we have had conversations with DOT at all. What I said was that I know that we went out and we tried to optimize the location along the available frontage. So I may be wrong about that. I'll have to check.
Okay.
All right. Steve, you want to add anything?
No, my concern was that I saw items mentioned in both the CB letter and in Ron's memo, saying that the applicant should, make changes to the plan. And like I said, I didn't see I must have overlooked it. Didn't see a detail on the ready rock wall, replacing the chain link fence and the curbing. So I was gonna say, I understand they want to have a public hearing, but I don't know that the plan is ready for it. But again, as you pointed out, it's the board's decision, but my objection to holding a public hearing would be obviated if they get the plans in time and the public hearing is held in January.
Okay. All right, board members, questions?
So Glenn, these Ready Rock walls, are they any sort of foundation, or, I mean, I know they've been also referred to as Jersey barriers, or affectionately known as mafia blocks? Is that what we're talking about here with these Ready Rock walls?
Ready Rock wall is a product. It is neither Jersey barrier or those kind of things that are in the middle that separate lanes that have a little shape to them that pushes the car back into its right lane if it hits it. And mafia block is just basically wasted concrete that's put in a form. Now these things are Ready Rock walls. There's several around town. They're basically big concrete blocks that are sculptured so look like, oh, right at
CRS.
Right at CRS has a Ready Rock wall in front of it.
Are they keyed into the ground? Is there some sort of foundation or some sort of way to
I'm sure
the ground, or are they movable? You know,
I believe, and I would have to check, but I believe that they are placed on a footing of, I believe the ground is prepared to hold them. I don't know that anybody pours a footing. Maybe Ron does, but I don't.
Yeah, no, they're typically, you just establish probably a 6 or 9 inch gravel base,
Yeah.
and they get placed, and if there's any need, there'll be a top course set to make the entire assembly attractive.
Right.
but they're still movable. They're not fixed to the ground. They're not in any sort of footing or foundation.
No, they're not set permanent, but they're very substantial.
Oh, they're
not easily
substantial,
moved.
but they're still movable. Right. Okay.
And next, Kim, looks like you want to say something.
Is Neil done?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. So, Ron, so Max's memo said that they wanted curbing, I thought, to stop liquid from flowing out. So would these Ready Rock walls stop that from happening?
That's not my recollection at all, Kim. Like what I first said, we've graded, and actually you can see it on the plan in front of you if you really look closely. The water is graded to run to the up. What they were concerned with is that the pavement would decay and start to break away and stuff, and then migrate into the wetlands. And I'm sure the Ready Rock wall would actually do a better job than a curb.
Okay, because that's just what the sentence is in here. It's curbing around the entire parking area as well as mandating. But, you know, so I'm just making sure that I understand.
Yeah.
So I have another question though. I don't remember whether, I thought we had more concerns about this particular site than just the conservation board issues. I thought we had some traffic issues and, you know, trucks going back and forth across Route 9. And within the last month, there was an accident right in front of that space where there was a truck pulling out that got hit by, I can't remember what kind of car.
I'll get you
was
some.
hit.
That's not the story I was told.
I have pictures because I went right past it and there were, you know.
I was told, and I will check this, but I was told that it was not having to do with a truck exiting as exiting any of those properties. It was just, so I'll check. And
Okay,
you can
'cause
check too.
We do have similar problems here with big trucks going across the road with nobody directing anything, you know, backing in, things like that. Now, maybe that's remedied when you actually have, when it isn't hodgepodge in there in their actual spaces. But, you know, I thought that traffic was, you know, one of our concerns.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I don't deny that. But I think certainly controlling the intersection to it was mentioned in one of the meetings earlier, one of the discussions earlier, that controlling the exit or the entrance helps with that situation.
And then the planning board did make a referral to DOT and raise those specific concerns in the hope that they would respond or evaluate the application filed by the applicant whenever that came in.
Okay,
the
other
DOT.
question?
I'm sorry, when the application to the DOT comes in from the applicant.
Yeah, the applicant has to file for a highway work permit with DOT.
So when does that happen, before or after we approve?
That's what I was
Historically,
trying
it
to-
happens. Historically, it happens afterward. I'm sure we can put in a plan between now and then, between now and the second week in December.
I would agree with Glenn that normally the physical permit comes in after your action. But typically the board is anxious to see some interplay between the agency and the applicant, so you can be assured that a permit would be forthcoming.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Peter, please.
I just have one question about the wetlands in the back, which appeared on our site visit to be in pretty sad shape. The plan for the restoration is going to be put together by whom, which boards are going to get it, and are we going to get it in time for the January public hearing?
I don't know the answer to that question, to that last question. We will probably prepare the plan, as I said before, in consultation with Max, and he'll probably drive the design to a greater extent, and we'll execute the design.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I'm just gonna, there is something I just am a little confused about. One, Glenn, I heard you mention some things that sound like they're not exactly taking what seem like mandated items in the conservation board. You said that you're not going to do a quote completely impervious surface. You're going to use, I forget the term you used, but it sounds like things that are already around and moving them around. This states a mandating a completely impervious surface. That sounds like a lot more significant than what you were saying the applicant was planning on proposing.
I don't remember that. I can't respond to that. I don't remember reading that in his memo. I do have some issues with that memo, and I'm going to talk to Max about it because I think he overstated a couple of things. I tried not to overstate anything here, but I'll talk with him about that.
I think you're going to have to do that because from what you said, I'm just going to read. I assume you have it, and if not, I'll Kelly can email it.
I did. I got it this afternoon.
Yeah, sorry. So, and we got it probably a few days before because it was in our packets, but
Right.
It states installation of a chain link fence, grading towards, as you already said, towards a center drain, although you said it was going to be in the further north, and then curbing, as well as mandating that a completely impervious surface be installed over the parking area, blah, 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 and then the multi-year restoration plan. And so that just seems like there seems to be a distance between what you're proposing versus what Max is saying. I don't know where it is, and I don't know where the truth is, but as Ron, not truth, but where the right answer is, but as Ron stated in his memo, we kind of need resolution of that before we can have a public hearing, because to have a public hearing, I want to have a complete file for the public to be able to go read. Now, with that in mind, I'd like to then ask a question of my colleagues, and maybe Steve, you can weigh in. It's been almost a year since we did our site visit. It was 10 months ago. That site was dramatic. I remember we all had some interesting reactions to the site. Steve was not there, but Steve maybe has driven by and noticed it. And we have two new board members who have not seen it. Has these two questions? A, to Glenn, I have not walked it. Has the site changed at all in terms of its stuff?
It's changing all the time, but its basic characteristics have not changed.
Okay, got it. And then secondly, Steve, are we allowed to have a second site visit? We have had it's been a long period of time and a somewhat change of the board. Is it worth, and are we allowed to have another site visit?
Well, you're allowed to if there's a rational basis for passage of a year on a site like this. I think it would be justified. If you wanted, you could just have your two new members go. You don't have to have a complete board site visit if it's just a matter of bringing them up to speed. But, it's not like you're doing it every month here. And I think if you wanted to, you'd certainly be within your authority authority to schedule another site visit.
Heidi and Laura, would you like a visit?
Yeah, actually.
Heidi?
I would too. It's very hard to picture. I mean,
Yeah, it's worth seeing, Heidi. It's like
Yeah.
the highlights of the community. You enjoy it.
I'm sure I'll just move directly to the Adirondacks after seeing this site. That's.
I'd be willing to go out with your 2 new members to assist you in understanding the project and the
Okay.
scope.
Now, do we have to then notice that? I mean, they are a subset of the board, but I don't know if it's the worst thing in the world to let the public see this again. There were no members of the public when we went, but is that something we have to do, or can we keep it informal?
If it's less than a quorum of the board, you can keep it informal. If you're sending 4 or more members, then you have to notice it.
Kim?
I think we should notice it, and we should all go if we can.
Okay, and as I've discussed with Neil, I'm sorry, Neil, I didn't mean to, but if you need to, what you can do is you notice it, you go, if you have more than 10 people, in order to comply with the COVID restrictions, set aside a group of them so that you only have 7 people meeting at a time in any one place. So 7 people go, or pardon me, 10. So 10 people go in, they take a look, they come out, the next group goes in, and you can have overlap if you want to have Glenn and, I don't know, Ron or Neil or whoever go in with both groups. You certainly can do that. Just don't exceed 10 people.
So, Glenn, Glenn, are you opposed to that, of us having another visit? I realize it's not, we don't typically, I don't recall ever doing that, but seems with the new board members and the magnitude of this.
I have no objection.
Okay, so I'd like to then get a motion to schedule a site visit, hopefully do it, obviously before the next meeting. That will give Glenn, I think, time to take the comments, adjust both of what Ron has here as well as with Max, and then we can review and see if it's complete, and then we can schedule a public hearing when we get together in December, if everyone's okay with that plan. Okay, Kim's nodding her head. No one else is shaking their head in the wrong direction.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
We'll probably ask you to schedule a public hearing then in February, to be perfectly frank.
That we could use the relief, to tell you the truth, as you well know. So, because next month, because clearly we're going to close this meeting here when we're done with this action. And so, Kelly, what's the schedule look like in terms of people obviously don't want to do it this coming weekend. It's too soon. Is December 6th an appropriate date for folks? Does that work for you, Glenn?
Yes.
Heidi and Laura, especially since you're the guests of honor.
It's fine by me.
Laura, good. Anyone, December 6th, and voluntary for everyone else on the board. Certainly, you don't have to come, but if you'd like to come, I think you're more than welcome to.
December 6th.
9:30.
Yes, 9:30. Okay, can I have a motion then for December 6th, 9:30 a.m. site visit to be
I'll make
noticed?
that motion.
Thank you, Kim. Dennis, second. Thank you, Dennis. Any questions, comments?
Maybe, Neil, but this might be a good time to ask Glenn to, like we were saying earlier, maybe put out some markers, give us some visual guides to follow this line, the fence, where the cultured stone's gonna go.
Okay.
Give us some, send the guys out and put
So
some.
we had done that for the conservation board, but my guess is that we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, just some stakes and some tape, just so we can get a feel for what's going on. Thanks.
Stakes and tape. All right. Did we didn't finish voting. So can all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, and abstentions, objections. Okay, so that's where we are. You're going to do your work on that. I'm going to take a motion to adjourn. I want to apologize to the Desmond Fish Library, which would have been my 3rd recusal for the night. So I can't have my hat trick tonight. But Tim and Jen, you will be first on the docket in the December meeting. I hope you can both attend, or whomever else representing the Desmond Fish Library. Kim will take that one on. Thank you, Jen. I apologize again. We're volunteers too, and this is 2 hours and 40 minutes is asking a lot for a bunch of volunteers on a Thursday night. So I'm going to have a motion to, and then secondly, Kelly, we're going to do right after Desmond Fish, we're going to do Shakespeare. And so, Mr. McCallum, thank you for your patience We try to be transparent, and that's why we told them they were not going to be on the docket tonight at all. And I knew that was not going to happen. So Glenn, a good decision we made. All right, so motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Peter.
I'll
Second,
make that motion.
anyone, any last comments they want to make?
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Well played, Bob.
Yes,
The
thank you. You too.
politician,
Happy
a
Thanksgiving.
great,
Oh.
leave it to the politician to say that. Good job, Bob. Kelly, good job tonight. Thank you very
everybody.
much. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Good night.
Thank
Night.
you, Kelly. Thanks.
Good night.
All right, everybody.
Hi, thanks, Bob.
Night.